The spotlight can be a cruel companion. It illuminates everything: your talent, your vulnerability, and sometimes the ugliest parts of humanity itself. What happens when a performer who has given everything to his craft suddenly finds himself at the mercy of a crowd that refuses to see his worth? This is the story of one night in 1962, when the glittering facade of show business cracked open, revealing both the darkness of prejudice and the transformative power of true friendship. Before we dive into this extraordinary moment that changed lives forever, if you believe in stories about courage, loyalty, and standing up for what's right, show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement helps us bring more incredible true stories to light. The Constellation Room at the Desert Sands Hotel in Las Vegas had hosted countless performances, but nothing quite prepared its staff for the electric tension that filled the air on that particular Saturday evening in late March. The venue, with its sweeping Art Deco architecture and crystal chandeliers imported from Czechoslovakia, typically radiated elegance and sophistication. Tonight, however, something felt different. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Sammy Davis Jr. stood backstage adjusting his bow tie for the 7th time. At 36 years old, he had already lived several lifetimes' worth of experiences. Born in the cramped apartment above a Harlem bodega, he had been performing since he was 3 years old, touring with his father and uncle in the vaudeville circuit. He had survived a devastating car accident that cost him his left eye, learned to tap dance with a precision that left audiences speechless, and mastered impressions of everyone from Jimmy Cagney to Nat King Cole. He had converted to Judaism, married Swedish actress May Britt in defiance of anti-miscegenation laws, and become one of the most versatile entertainers in America. Yet none of that seemed to matter to certain segments of the audience filing into the Constellation Room that night. Marcus Bellingham, the hotel's general manager, had received 36 cancellation requests that afternoon. Not refund requests, cancellations specifically citing that they refused to watch that performer. Marcus, a transplant from Georgia who had moved to Nevada to escape the suffocating racism of the South, felt his stomach turn with each phone call. He had tried to convince the hotel owner, Vincent Calabrese, to postpone the show, but Vincent had been adamant. "We made a commitment," Vincent had said, his Brooklyn accent thick with conviction. "Sammy's name is on the marquee. We don't back down." Dean Martin arrived at the venue an hour before showtime, earlier than his usual fashionably late entrance. At 44, Dean had cultivated a persona of effortless cool, the smooth crooner who seemed perpetually amused by life's absurdities, always with a rocks glass of what the audience assumed was whiskey but was actually apple juice. Behind the carefully constructed image of the carefree playboy lived a man of surprising depth and unwavering loyalty. Dean had grown up as Dino Paul Cracetti in Steubenville, Ohio, the son of Italian immigrants. His father, Gaetano, had worked in the coal mines and later as a barber, speaking broken English until the day he died. Dean understood what it meant to be seen as other, to have your humanity questioned based on factors beyond your control. When he had first met Sammy years ago, he had recognized a kindred spirit, another performer who had clawed his way up from nothing, who understood that entertainment was both art and survival. The two had become genuinely close during the formation of the Rat Pack, that legendary group of performers who had revolutionized Las Vegas entertainment. Frank Sinatra was the ringleader, the ambitious powerhouse. Joey Bishop was the wit. Peter Lawford brought Hollywood connections. But the bond between Dean and Sammy ran deeper than mere professional collaboration. They shared late-night conversations about fatherhood, about the price of fame, about the exhaustion of always having to prove yourself worthy of the space you occupied. Tonight, Dean had come early because he had heard whispers. The casino floor buzzed with ugly rumors that a group calling themselves the Silver State Citizens Committee had organized a protest, that they planned to disrupt Sammy's performance, that they had even sold special tickets to their members to ensure a hostile presence in the audience. Backstage, Sammy paced in his dressing room, the walls covered with good luck telegrams and photographs of previous triumphs. His accompanist, a brilliant pianist named Theodore Whitmore who had graduated magna cum laude from the New England Conservatory of Music, sat quietly at the upright piano in the corner, playing soft jazz to calm the nerves that everyone could feel. "Maybe we should open with something safer," Theodore suggested gently. "Not the Bojangles tribute. Something they can't twist into." "No." Sammy's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not changing who I am. Not for them. Not for anyone." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dean Martin entered without waiting for a response, his characteristic smile in place but his eyes serious. "Pally," Dean said, using his favorite nickname for his friends. "How we feeling?" Sammy tried to smile. "Like I'm about to walk into a firing squad wearing a tuxedo." Dean crossed the room and gripped Sammy's shoulder. "Listen to me. I've been out there. I've seen the crowd. Yeah, there's some ugly in the room tonight. But there's also a lot of people who came specifically because they love you, because they want to support you. Don't give the ugliness more power than it deserves." "Easy for you to say," Sammy said, and immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Don't apologize." Dean's grip tightened slightly. "You're right. It is easier for me, which is exactly why I'm not going anywhere tonight. I'm staying right here. If anyone wants to come at you, they go through me first." The opening act, a juggling troupe from Montreal called Les Merveilleux, finished their set to polite applause. Marcus Bellingham stepped onto the stage to introduce Sammy, his hands trembling slightly as he held the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "The Desert Sands Hotel is proud to present one of the most talented performers of our generation. A man who sings, dances, acts, and plays 7 instruments. Please welcome to the stage, Sammy Davis Jr. The response was fractured. Half the audience erupted in genuine, enthusiastic applause. The other half sat in stony silence. And from a section in the back right, approximately 20 people began to boo. Not subtle expressions of disapproval, but loud, deliberate, hateful sounds designed to humiliate. Sammy walked onto the stage, the spotlight finding him instantly. He had faced difficult crowds before, segregated audiences in the South, hecklers in dive bars during his early days, critics who dismissed him regardless of his talent. But this felt different. This felt personal and organized. He began with "The Birth of the Blues," his voice strong and clear, hitting every note with professional precision. The booers grew louder. Someone threw a wadded napkin onto the stage. Sammy's jaw tightened, but he continued. Years of discipline, of refusing to let anyone see you sweat, kept him moving through the choreography. By the third song, his carefully constructed composure began to crack. His voice, usually so controlled and versatile, wavered slightly. The musicians in the pit orchestra exchanged worried glances. Theodore's hands moved across the piano keys, trying to support his friend through music alone. Dean Martin watched from the wings, his famous easy demeanor replaced by barely contained rage. Beside him, Vincent Calabrese had appeared, his face red with anger, not at Sammy, but at the demonstrators who were destroying the dignity of his establishment. "I'm calling security," Vincent hissed. "I'm throwing every last one of them out." "Wait," Dean said, his mind working quickly. "I have a better idea." Before Vincent could respond, Dean strode onto the stage. He hadn't been announced. This wasn't part of the program. He simply walked out into the lights as if he belonged there, which in that moment he absolutely did. The booing faltered, confused by this unexpected development. Sammy, mid-verse, looked at his friend with surprise and something that might have been relief. Dean walked directly to center stage, positioning himself slightly in front of Sammy. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its usual playful humor. Instead, it held a steel that most audiences never heard. "Excuse me, folks," Dean said, and the room went almost silent. "I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to leave my friend here to do what he does better than almost anyone alive. But first, you're all going to listen to me." He paused, letting the silence build, using every technique he had learned in decades of commanding stages. "Some of you came here tonight with hate in your hearts. I can see you. I can hear you. And I want you to know something. You're not just showing disrespect to Sammy. You're showing disrespect to yourselves. Because if you can't see the talent standing in front of you, if you can't appreciate the years of work and dedication this man has poured into his craft, then you're missing out on something extraordinary. And that's your loss. That's your poverty, not his. Someone in the back section tried to restart the booing, but Dean's glare stopped them cold. Here's what's going to happen now, Dean continued. Either you're going to sit quietly and let this man perform, or you're going to leave. Those are your options. Because I'll tell you something else. Sammy Davis Jr. is my friend. He's one of the finest human beings I've ever known. He's a better man than most of you will ever be. And I will stand on this stage for the entire performance if I have to. Every song, every dance, every second. Whoever wants to boo him will have to boo me too. And I promise you, that's a fight you don't want. The silence that followed was profound. Even the sympathetic portion of the audience seemed to be holding their breath, aware they were witnessing something unprecedented. Dean turned to Sammy, and in that moment the mask of cool detachment fell away completely. What showed underneath was pure, unguarded affection. "Show them what you've got, Pally," Dean said softly, though the microphone caught it. "I've got your back." Then he did something that would become legendary in Las Vegas lore. Instead of leaving the stage, Dean Martin pulled up a stool, positioned it slightly to the side, and sat down. He lit a cigarette, crossed his legs, and settled in with the clear intention of staying for the entire performance. The message was unmistakable. If you want Sammy Davis Jr., you get Dean Martin too. Sammy stood there for a moment, and those close enough could see tears welling in his eyes. Then he nodded once, cleared his throat, and began to sing "I've Got You Under My Skin," with a power and emotion that transformed the room. The dissenting section sat in awkward silence. A few people got up and left, but the rest stayed, and gradually, reluctantly, some of them began to actually listen. Because Dean Martin was right. You couldn't watch Sammy Davis Jr. perform and deny his extraordinary talent. The complexity of his tap dancing, where each step created its own percussion. The way his voice could shift from tender vulnerability to powerful belting. The impressions that captured not just voices, but entire personalities. Theodore Whitmore later recalled that it became the best performance he had ever accompanied. Sammy, freed from the weight of facing the hatred alone, performed with a fearlessness that was breathtaking. And through it all, Dean Martin sat on his stool, smoking, occasionally sipping his apple juice, and radiating protective friendship. By the time Sammy launched into his closing number, a soaring rendition of Mr. Bojangles that left few dry eyes in the house, the energy had completely transformed. The standing ovation that followed was genuine and enthusiastic, even from some of those who had arrived with prejudice in their hearts. After the curtain fell, Sammy and Dean stood backstage, neither quite ready to break the moment. "You didn't have to do that," Sammy finally said. "Yes, I did," Dean replied simply. "That's what friendship means. You don't abandon people when it gets uncomfortable. You show up. You stand beside them. You make it clear that they're not alone." Vincent Calabrese appeared, embracing both men. "That was the most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed in this building," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You both just changed the culture of this entire strip." He was more right than he knew. Word of Dean's stand spread through Las Vegas within hours. By the next morning, it had made newspapers across the country. Other performers began speaking out more boldly against discrimination. Other venues began examining their own policies and prejudices. The friendship between Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. deepened after that night, becoming the stuff of legend. They performed together countless more times, always with a special electricity that audiences could feel. But those who were there that evening in the Constellation Room knew they had witnessed something unique. The moment when one person's courage transformed into a shield for another. Sammy would later say that Dean's intervention gave him strength for every performance that followed. It reminded him that his worth wasn't dependent on universal approval, that genuine friendship could stand against hatred, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to let someone face darkness alone. Dean, in his typically understated way, would brush off questions about that night. "I just did what anyone should do," he would say. "I stood next to my friend." But it wasn't what anyone would do. It was what one exceptional man did, in one crucial moment, changing everything that followed. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of standing up for what's right and being a true friend, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Real change happens when we refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. Let's keep these important conversations alive. Thank you for watching, and remember, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice of a friend saying, "I've got your back."